All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are excited to be partnering with the Oregon State University Alumni Association, and we're professional and continuing education, also with Oregon State University, to present this webinar today on avoiding the top 10 resume mistakes. And we are going to get started. Our speaker today is Yulia Dennis. She's the Director of Alumni Career Services, and we're really excited to have her here presenting. Yulia provides career services to over 180,000 OSU alumni, and she's personally mentored hundreds with one-on-one counseling, including resume development. So we're really excited to have you here presenting on some of these skills. So we're going to go ahead and get started.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. So this is going to be a webinar that's a partnership between the Alumni Association and TASE, and we're both really committed to OSU professional development for students, alumni, and friends, and we're glad you're here. And I'm also really happy to be sharing these tips with you. Feel free to ask questions as we go through the webinar. There is that chat box option that you can see on the side, and then go ahead and put your questions in there, and we'll be checking those throughout the webinar today. And then a link to the presentation will be emailed today, so look for that after the recording. So the OSU Alumni Association offers a variety of career services to alumni, and I just wanted to give a brief outline of that for any of you who are part of the alumni community at OSU. And you can reach out to me for any of these services. So we have, we offer consultations online, in person, and resume reviews, and also we do development such as these webinars and online connection events. So lots of different kinds of things are offered to alumni as part of our career services suite. So for this webinar today, we're going to be talking about the goals of webinars. We're going to look at 10 common mistakes and how to overcome them, tips for a successful job search, and then how to get a free resume and cover letter review. Something to keep in mind is that this webinar is resume focused, and we're not going to be talking about CVs, which are curricula vitae. And in many ways, CVs are opposite of resumes, and the advice is very different. Oftentimes, these positions are academically focused. I mean, I can help with CVs, but we won't talk about them during the webinar. And so, if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you with those. Okay, so why does a resume matter? I think we all kind of understand, okay, yeah, I need a resume to get a job, but what is the actual goal of a resume? So the goal of a resume is to get an interview. And typically what I've heard is a reviewer will look at a resume anywhere between average of 20 to 30 seconds. A couple weeks ago I read something where it's now down to like 6 to 10 seconds, so that may be going down. And so really what you're trying to do during a resume is demonstrate that you have the skills and the knowledge to do the job well. And then the interview is really the place for you to shine. That's where you demonstrate fit and enthusiasm. And so something I encourage you to think about during your interview is to recognize you had the resume, you got the interview great, but now really that's where you focus on how you benefit the company and your enthusiasm and your organizational fit. And I've seen it happen where people will say, oh, but it's on my resume and you read my resume. Well, remember, they only spent maybe 20 seconds looking at your resume. And so it's okay to reiterate the same things you talked about in your resume during the interview and give them a chance to see examples and what you do and how you'll fit the position. The first tip is, this is a really common one that I see on lots of resumes, is remove the objective statement. So an objective statement is outdated. You can also remove the address as well, your address, if you're doing a broad regional search. So an address is not a requirement for a resume. An example of an objective statement is, I'm searching for an engineer specialist 2 position at a company that allows me to grow and use my strong organizational skills. So remove the objective statement. Instead, do a summary. So a summary of accomplishments or a summary of skills is going to be a much better way to go. And the main reason for this is that companies and employers, they're interested in your objective or what you want. They're interested in what are you going to offer to them. And so removing the objective statement is a good way to move forward in your resume. And tip number 2, removing work experience that's 15 years or older. And you may wonder, why is that the case? Because I worked hard in that position, or I got something that was really valuable. Well, again, the search process is from the employer's point of view. It's not from it's not about you. It's about what will you offer to the employers. And companies are interested in your recent history. What did you accomplish? What's relevant? What will you do for them? And so putting in 10 to 15 years of your experience is going to be what they'll primarily look for. And also just keep things up to date. That's another important thing to do for your resume. And number 3 ties a little bit with the one I just shared earlier. So always keep your educational degree and institution on your resume, but it's okay to remove graduation dates that are over 10 years. Sometimes I've heard people say anywhere from 3 to 5 years can be removed too. I would say go ahead and use your guys' judgment about that. But if it's 10 years or older, it's okay and safe to remove the year from your resume. And number 4, I think this is a big one. So focus on key accomplishments. Again, employers want to know what will you do for them. Put in a summary section at the beginning with 5 to 6 clear accomplishment-focused bullets. And also, as part of this too, make sure that your resume is no more than 2 pages. So 2 pages for all positions max. An example of an accomplishment is initiated and implemented a social media campaign that increased online engagement by 30%. Or another example is led a 10-member team on a new workflow design. So numbers, what you did, how you improved things is going to be what the companies look for. And it also makes it easy for that 20, 30-second scan because they're like, oh, wow, they did social media 30%, 10-member team, new workflow, great, wow, that makes sense to them. Tip number 5 is to add a LinkedIn profile link. I personally am a huge fan of LinkedIn, and so do we have a question there?
Yeah, it looks like we have a question. What if you're a recent grad and don't necessarily have as much experience? Sort of can you use some of the accomplishments that you've done in your schooling career on your resume? Is that something that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good one too. So that graduation date slide 2 is mainly for those who have been out of school for a while. But if you're within like even 5 years from your undergrad, you can still add a lot of things in there about your undergrad experience. The way to look at it is like this. So if you're coming, let's say if you just got done with high school, you're going to be doing a lot of high school stuff on there. So you'll have your high school, potentially your GPA if it's high enough, your volunteering, etc. If you're in college, you're going to focus on college. So you'll list your expected graduation date, your clubs, your involvement with any kind of jobs on there. Then when you transition into post-college, that's when for a while, you'll still list your graduation year. Again, it's a demonstration of like, look, I only graduated 3 years ago, and I'm still trying to figure out my professional career. Here are the jobs I've had. Here's my involvement. And then once you get to a certain point in your career, then you'll go ahead and start dropping some of the college involvement unless it's very relevant. So in some cases, let's say you're part of some kind of a national organization, and someone in the company is also part of that national organization. Well, yeah, great, go ahead and add that in. But you'll want to tailor it each time that you move along. The other thing is, this is where the summary page, the summary section is really great, because let's say you're in college or you're a new graduate and you don't have much experience. Well, maybe you did a school project, or maybe you were part of a club and you did get to work on a team of 10 people, or you did get to do an event. The summary doesn't have to be just paid experience. It can be volunteer experiences too. So it gives you a lot more flexibility.
Awesome. And we have one more. It says, you said to cut out experience older than 15 years on the resume, but what about on your LinkedIn page? Should you cut job experience that's older than 15 years from that?
Yeah, great question. So LinkedIn, the tips I'm giving you are actually really similar for LinkedIn as well. A lot of times I would say for LinkedIn, keeping it even shorter than your resume is really good. yeah, go ahead and cut out the 15 years of experience from LinkedIn, and again, focus on just a couple bullets of your key accomplishments. I love LinkedIn, and so I think it's a great question to go into the why add a LinkedIn profile link. So why does LinkedIn matter? So as I said earlier, I'm a huge advocate of LinkedIn because it is a database of professional information. That's what it is. It allows you to connect to people in a way that we're very fortunate to have that. And so I think it quickens people's career trajectory if they use it intentionally and use it often enough. And we are planning on doing more webinars in the future about LinkedIn because I think it's such a big topic, and I'll only spend a few minutes talking about it, but I think it is such a relevant conversation piece for us as we're thinking about professional growth. So for LinkedIn, it's very similar to a resume, but you do have photos and you do have you're following groups, and it's a very active, an active public resume. The reason that you should have a personalized link is that you should just put it on your resume next to where you would put like your email address, or if you put your home address, you'd put it in that same section on top of your resume. And there are so many things you can do with LinkedIn. It's it's hard to break it down in a webinar that's just geared towards resumes. But one thing that you could do is just start connecting with people who are in your profession or looking at professional organizations. And I'll talk more about how to use LinkedIn later on as part of the webinar. But for now, those are the main pieces. Number 6 is keeping your resume simple and clean. So no fancy fonts, colors, or graphics. Make it easy to read, make it easy to scan. The only exception is graphic design or other creative positions. But even with that, be really careful. So I've talked to people who are hiring who use the big software scanning systems for resumes, and what they've said is some of the systems can't read it if it's like a special graphic box. Let's say you have a sidebar that's a special graphic and you're listing your key accomplishments there. Some of those software systems can't read that, and so you have to be really careful with how you do this. And keywords are really important too. So for example, if your position requires Python, go ahead and write Python in, and then use keywords from the position description, especially thinking about the way the online software sifters work. And then I see maybe some questions that we might address right now.
We have one that's saying, if you're sending out a lot of resumes, do you have a time management tip on efficiently personalizing your resume for each employer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say that, and I'll get to this too as we get through the webinar, but you'll want to personalize it for every position you apply for. And what works for someone might not work for someone else. It really depends. Like some people like to keep information and on like one resume, and then they'll like pull information out. So like you might have one main resume that's like 4 pages long, and then for each position you tailor it. Or you might have like 5 different kinds of resumes, and then you might tweak it slightly for each one. You always want to tailor it, and you always want to have a unique resume and a unique cover letter for every position, because it's really, on the hiring side, it's so easy to see when you just use the same one. I think most people I've talked to who are in the higher end, they know. They're like, oh yeah, they like didn't change anything for this position, and so it doesn't make it seem like you really want this particular one. But the other thing is too, and I'll cover tips of like how to overcome this, but just mass sending resumes out is not an effective way to apply for jobs. And I'll give you tips of how to overcome that. And so you're going to be increasing the amount of time that you're talking to people, and you might decrease the amount of time you're actually just sending out your resume. But your chances of success will be higher with the meeting people versus the just sending out resumes.
And we've got a few more coming in. So we have one saying, what about a list of references? Should we include those separately, available upon request? How would we reference those?
Great question. So don't put available upon request. That's the same as an objective statement. Old, don't do it. don't include them unless they ask for it. And sometimes they'll say like list 3. Yeah, go ahead and list 3. But in a lot of private sector jobs, they don't even ask for it all. So only provide it when they ask for them. But don't put available upon request.
Excellent. And we have another one saying, speaking of machines that read resumes, what's the best way to get through those?
So the best way to get through that is with this slide exactly. So keep it simple, clean, no fancy fonts, colors, or graphics. Use keywords that are very important. For example, in your summary, you can actually write, let's say you're applying for, let's say it's a director of HR position. You put in on top, Director of Human Resources Summary, key accomplishments. You list, supervised HR professionals, worked in hiring capacity, etc. And you put the position title of what you're applying for in the summary section. And then whatever they put in their position description, pulling out the key verbs and pulling out key terms and adding that in there. What those software systems do is they just pull out keywords, and so you just want to make it super easy for them to see that you have those words already included. That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, and we have one more saying somebody participated in a Google Online Marketing Challenge. So how would somebody incorporate job or skills or experience that isn't necessarily linked to a particular job, but they would want to call out on their resume? Is there a place that they can do that?
Yeah, so you can do that in the summary. You can also add it in at the bottom, so you can say something like other experience or professional development. All of those things are very relevant and really great to use. And so, yeah, highlight that. That's excellent.
Okay. Do you want to move on to the next slide and we'll get through some of these questions? Sure.
Exactly. All right. The next one is, again, it's kind of getting back to what we talked about with, like, getting through the review system or through the math application system. So using strong verbs is one way to overcome a lot of this stuff. And avoid overusing verbs like assist, work, help, because they're very generic. Examples of good verbs to use are initiated or launched. Also, a thesaurus is a great way to find great verbs. Or you can use Word can also help you find alternatives. And so the other thing you can do is you can actually pull out the verbs that they use in the position description and plug them into your resume.
So it sounds like job board listings are a bad way to find a job, and it's better to shift your focus to more productive methods of searching. So does that tie in with resume quality and using these strong verbs?
Definitely. So I will say that meeting people, though, is going to, let's say if you had to choose one, strong verbs or meeting people is going to be the better way to go. So meeting people is really important.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and then I wanted to provide a couple examples of verbs that you can use. So if you led a project and if you were in charge of something or initiative from the start to finish, try using verbs like chaired, controlled, coordinated, execute, or headed. And then verbs when you envisioned or brought a project to life. So if you developed, created, or introduced a project to your company, try verbs like administered, built, charted, created, designed, or developed. Tip number 8 is proofread. So have someone else review your resume, and you can use someone like myself to do the proofreading, or you can use someone that you trust, or a family member, or a friend, or a mentor. In some cases, one mistake may get you removed from the pool. That's not always the case, but you want to be as mistake-free as possible. Okay, now I think we're getting to the topic that lots of people had questions about, is talking to people. So talking to someone in the company before applying or meeting other people is a really important and really big key aspect of professional development and job searching. I would say this is a very common mistake, and I purposefully left it for number 9 because I wanted to talk about the resume logistics first, but then really get to the main sort of core message of my the webinar at the end here. So this is the number 1 mistake I see. So if you just apply online, and let's say you have an amazing resume, best of the best, if you just apply online, so I completed a certificate program in career development and helping people navigate the career search. And if you apply online, what we learned through that is you only have about 5% chance of getting something. So there's still some chance, but let's say you're sending out 90 applications, and if all you're doing is sending those 90 applications, that's still 5% chance of getting something, so really low return rate. So how do you overcome that? So you overcome that by talking to people and meeting people in the companies and in the industry that you're wanting to be in. The number one method that I recommend people improve their chances is through informational interviews. So if you talk to someone in an informational interview, you are bumping up your chance of getting a job in that or a position in that company or organization at some point to 40%. So way higher. So let's say if you are choosing between spending, let's say you only have like 3 hours a week on your job search and you have to choose what you spend on, an information interview is going to get you way quicker results than sending out 50 resumes. The other thing is, I talk to people all the time about what it's like in the job search, and you can get a sense of despair if you're just applying online because you're not hearing back. You're like, what's wrong with me? My resume must be perfect. It's not perfect. What can I do? I've tried everything, and it's like, no matter how much I improve my resume, nothing's getting through. Well, that's because it honestly won't matter too much how great your resume is if you're not talking to people. So going back to the informational interview, so what is an informational interview and how can you go about it? So this is the best thing you can do for your job search, and not just for jobs, but really in general. So an informational interview, you're not asking for a job. All you're doing is asking someone, you're contacting them, and it's someone that is either has a position you want or is a hiring manager or is a supervisor of the kind of positions you want. And you talk to them and you ask them, what do they do? What are their values? How did they get the job? Advice. And you're finding out the values, goals, and what they're looking for in their company or their organization. One word of advice, too, is, again, from talking to lots of people, I get the sense of, like, what holds people back. The fear of rejection is a big one for this one. It's okay if you get no. It is common, especially on LinkedIn, to not have a response. And in a lot of cases, the second time you attempt to talk to someone, usually you get a higher response rate. So keep that in mind. And it's only going to take 1 or 2 people to really successfully move you forward in a job search. So if you meet Nike is your goal, and you meet a couple people, and you contact 20 people, most of them say no, but one person says yes, you go out for coffee with them, or you call them on the phone, and then you stay in touch with them on LinkedIn, and then you connect with them about a job, and they forward your name to an HR professional, and then they give you an interview, and then that's when you shine because you've talked to someone and you know their values and you know what they're looking for, and you know the way they speak, and you're able to speak their language. Great, you just landed yourself that job. Lots of people said no to you, and that's totally fine. It just takes a couple people.
Looks like we've got a few questions coming in. So is it always essential to have a business card on hand when you're going out to some of these networking events or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say always have a business card. And you can just make a generic one. It doesn't have to be like with your company. You can just be like your name, your email, your phone number.
Great. And then, is it okay to reach out to companies or dream jobs and say, here are my skills, keep me in mind? Is that inappropriate?
I would say you can do that. The better way would be to contact them and say, like, hey, I saw that you work here. I'm exploring this industry. Can I talk to you via phone or for coffee or lunch or something? Talk to them. So, like, one person who got a successful job offer, so she never said, hey, I want a job, but through the conversation, they were like, wow, you'd be a great fit. They kept her in mind. She never had to ask to be kept in mind. They kept her in mind. Then they offered her a position that they never posted, which is the case for a lot of positions. A lot of positions that are offered are never posted. Just someone tells you about it. And so, yeah, just you're not saying, like, please keep me in mind, but just having a conversation with them, they'll get a sense of who you are, and then you'll create that relationship that they'll keep you in mind.
And is it beneficial to to consider doing free or unpaid internships to meet or network with insiders if you're just getting started?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can do free or unpaid internships. The other thing that you can do too is you can volunteer. So it doesn't have to be an official internship. You can volunteer at an organization. So for employers, the #1 way that employers like to hire is from within. And when you volunteer, you essentially become an insider. You become that person from within. They already know you. They know your work ethic. So it's a good way to meet people. Then that second way that employers like to connect with people is through referrals. So again, if you're attending events or if you're meeting people, then you're getting those referrals in the company.
Great, thank you.
All right, and then tip number 10, I think that this has already been communicated through the webinar, but using multi-job search methods is a big recommendation. One important part of it too is that because the search process can take a while and it can be at some point disheartening, especially if you've been applying online, you're using like Indeed.com and just not having anyone contact you back. So when you use multiple methods, you're just increasing the chances that something will happen for you. And because referrals are best too, that means like volunteering or getting involved in professional organizations or talking to companies through information interviews or using LinkedIn. And then, you know, you may be also using like an Indeed.com or something as well. So you might be trying multiple methods as you job search. The other thing too, and one reason that having a variety of job search methods is good is because for an employer, hiring is risky. So they don't know if they're going to get someone who's going to be an added value to their company. And so employers are looking to minimize the risk of hiring an appropriate fit. And the more you're able to get to know people and find out, okay, what's important to them, what do they value most, then that gives you a chance to keep modifying things to be a better fit for that company. And like, for example, professional organizations, let's say if you're new to the Portland area and you're looking for a job as a graphic designer, well, if you join a regional graphic design group, well, that's like all these people who are in the field, and one of them might be hiring. So it just really shoots up the chance of you finding something that is a good fit for you too, because an interview is both ways, and it gives you a chance to interview people too. And that's another thing about informational interviews too. Like, I've done some in the past where I've met with someone, I'm like, wow, this is so not in line with who I am as a person. Like, this isn't going to be a good fit. So it gives you a chance to learn about yourself too, and what would be a good environment for you to be successful in.
Great. We have one that somebody asked recently. They were advised to read and take Thomas Rath's Strengths Finders and then add in their top 5 strengths profile to their resume. So based on your keeping it simple principle mentioned earlier, do you agree with that recommendation?
Yes, I'm a huge fan of StrengthsFinder. I love it. I would say instead of just adding your top 5 strengths, pull out those verbs. So let's say you get, you know, strategizer as one of your top strengths. Well, you can add that into your resume, quote unquote, strategically. So you can say, you know, worked, headed a team of people and strategically led the group through blah, 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 whatever it is that you do. It doesn't have to be a leadership role per se, but just adding those strengths in is a really good thing to do. The other thing is you can add into your cover letter in the same way and just sprinkling it throughout. But I don't, I would say based on what I've seen, and this isn't, so a lot of this advice is like take it with a grain of salt because you're going to hear different things from different people, and it's such a personalized thing, and companies vary and culture vary. But I've heard people don't want to just see like, I'm a good communicator and I'm an achiever. No, they want to see what you've done, and so you can still use those same terms, but talk about it in the context of what you've accomplished and what you will accomplish because you have that strength.
Thank you.
All right, and then we'll do a summary. So to summarize, so the goal of a resume is to land an interview, and then keeping it simple, accomplishment focused, and removing something such as the objective statement or graduation dates over 10 years, using strong verbs and verbs and nouns that are tied to the position description, and then have someone proofread your resume and give it a second review. And then you can feel free to remove work experience of 15 years or older. And then lastly, meeting people in your industry and in the company and using multiple job search methods will significantly increase your chances of having a successful job search.
Awesome. We have just a few more questions rolling in. This is awesome. Keep them coming, guys. So we have somebody that's saying, I've said some people are threatened by informational interviews. Do we just take the no's and move on and not worry about it too much? Sort of followed up, and is there some subjectivity to that and to the idea of a perfect resume?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of subjectivity in the idea of a perfect resume. Take the no's and just move forward. That is just something that's a natural part of the job search process. I have a lot of material that I provide to people when they are in a point where it's like, they're having something like imposter syndrome or they're feeling like they're not good enough. It's okay, take the no's. So for some people, they might not have the time or they're just not interested in helping other people. And that's an unfortunate part of some people's, whether it be their values or whatnot. The other thing to consider too is, let's say if it's a company and let's say you are someone who really cares about being in an environment where people care about each other, and let's say you've contacted 10 people in an organization and they've all said no, like, why are you contacting me? Well, I personally would say, well, that's a red flag to me. Like, I'm not interested in a non-help organization. So it's okay if someone says no, just move on and keep your eye on your goals.
Great. And are there any particular faux pas that you can advise people on avoiding when reaching out and wanting a connection on LinkedIn in particular? So what's sort of the of that?
Yeah, I would say, as with all things, keep it casual, keep it simple, and not like your first message shouldn't be, I'm looking for a job, can you get me a job? Thanks, bye. It should be like, hey, let's say you're in the trying to think of just a random field. Let's say you're a data scientist, and let's say you're new to Seattle. Well, you might connect with any data scientist that's in Seattle, especially like, let's say they have a connection to OSU. They worked here, they were a student, or they're somehow connected to the alumni community. So you connect with them, and the first way you connect with them is just simple. Hey, I'm also from OSU, and I'm new to Seattle area. I'm also in the data science field. Can we connect on LinkedIn? Boom, very simple. And then slowly you might develop a relationship. Maybe they post some things and you comment on it or something. But at no point are you saying, hey, let's say it's Dan. Hey Dan, like, I really need a job. Can you get me a job? Because I will say, like, that nothing throws people off than that. They're going to be like, so taking my breath, they're going to be. Some people might be into that. It's kind of to each his own. But for most people, that's too much. It's too forward. And then later you might say, hey, I saw that you posted this thing on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk to you more about that. And I also saw that you work at whatever. Let's say they're in Amazon. So you work at Amazon. Could I talk to you? Could we spend 15, 20 minutes talking on the phone about what you do? I'm very interested. Something like that. So you're developing a relationship with the person. And if you need assistance with this, like let's say if you've been doing a job search and you're really struggling, you can reach out to me and we can work on the strategies that will best fit you, especially if you're having trouble or if you're finding that you're just not having the courage to ask people, or if you're struggling with that no, or you're wanting that perfect resume and just not able to move forward. So I'm happy to help you through that.
Awesome. We've got a few questions that were sort of, what is the etiquette around following up? So on both submitting a job application or an informational interview and you haven't heard, what's the length of time or how often? Is there sort of some idea that you could give people on what's best practice there?
Yeah, so this is if someone, if you're applying and you're not hearing back.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, it's a good idea to give people a week or two. It varies by industry, but giving a little more time is a good thing to do. But feel free to follow up too if you aren't hearing back from people.
Excellent.
So next step, for those of you who alumni, students, staff, or faculty, you can join the OSU Beaver Careers group. And if you join that group, go ahead and message me either on LinkedIn or you can send me an email, one takeaway from the webinar, and then we'll send you an OSU Alumni Association window sticker, and then I'll enter you into a free career consultation. So again, this is just one way for you to stay up to date on what we're doing. The group is private, though it is close to OSU, so students, alumni, staff, and faculty. But it's a good way to connect with me. And then if you're not, part of that subgroup, then you can still connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can still stay in touch. And oftentimes I'll post similar content on my LinkedIn page as well.
Excellent. We had a few questions as well. Is it recommended to remove work experience older than 15 years if you're returning to the workforce? And then also sort of a tie into that, how would you present that you are returning to the workforce after retiring from a previous career? So if you have a gap in your work experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say for that, it would be great for you to work with someone either someone who can do a consultation, like in my case, or if you find someone else who can meet with you to talk about that. There's lots of ways to successfully navigate that, and I'm happy to help you along. I will say that there is so much, unfortunately, in our society. There's a lot of negative views of stepping away from the workforce. So a sad statistic that I learned that I work very, very hard to help people navigate is that if someone leaves the job force to raise children full time, their statistical chance of getting a job afterwards is the same as if they went to prison. So I think it illustrates how unfair our society is to people who are taking the time to take care of the next generation. So I am personally very dedicated to not let that statistic ever get in the way of someone. So I would help you or whoever that's in this position to navigate that well. Same with retirement. I'm currently helping someone who got cancer. They got a degree, got cancer, were out for 2 years, and so how to navigate that back. So one thing you can do is join a professional association, do a volunteer position, and you can list that as part of your experience. If you're on any of the parent committees, you can do that. So there's lots of different things to do, but I would be happy to help anyone who's in that position who needs assistance navigating that, going back to work.
Excellent. Yeah, we see a lot of people which are echoing that. That's quite an unfair statistic for sure.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm dedicated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, member of that.
So how about we've got a few sort of more technical questions. Would you want to list the start and finish dates of past experience, or list the number of hours volunteering?
Yeah, so if it's a volunteer position and let's say you volunteered 100 hours, you can go ahead and list that as part of your accomplishments. But I would say don't worry about adding in the specific hours, oh, I worked 40 hours a week here, or I worked 20 hours a week here. That's okay. Just put the years or the month and year. I've seen either way work very well. But yeah, you don't need to be too detailed unless it's a volunteer position and you spend a significant amount of time on it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay.
All right, and then of course, if you have questions, feel free to follow up with me. And we do offer free resume reviews to all alumni. And so if you have a resume review that you need, I can also do LinkedIn profile review and a cover letter review. So any of those things, I'm happy to assist with. The other thing too is I can help with graduate school applications as well. So anywhere where you're applying and you're trying to navigate those sort of documents, I'm happy to provide free resume reviews for you.
And I'm seeing a couple of questions come in as well. So you can always message Yulia directly. We'll also send out some of the Alumni Association and PACE's information as well if you have any questions. And this presentation is recorded, and we will send it out following up the webinar as well. And we've got a few more questions. So how valuable do you find attending job fairs these days?
I would say it's still very relevant. So I regularly attend both the OSU main campus and OSU Cascade career fairs, and People are eager to hire from those fairs, and I will regularly talk to people who, like, they're the recruiter, but the year before, or like 2 years before, they were the student or the person looking for work. And so because you're meeting people face to face and you're getting that connection and you can find out more about them, I would say job fairs are an excellent way to make connections. Even if the company that you want is not there, maybe they know people in the company you do want to work in. There could be something potentially relationship building associated with it. So I would say it's a great thing to still keep engaged on.
Awesome. And do we have a career fair coming up at Oregon State?
Not over the summer, so the next ones will be starting in the fall. So you can go to the OSU Career Development Center page and see what will be coming up in future ones.
Awesome. So Professional Education is really excited. I've partnered with Alumni Association on this webinar. And I also have the Assistant Director of Program Development, Emily Henry, here, who's going to talk a little bit about sort of what PACE is and give you guys an idea about if you're looking for next steps in your career or anything like that. You can contact Yulia. You can also contact us. So Emily?
Yes. So Professional and Continuing Education is what PACE stands for. Our website is pace.oregonstate.edu. And hearing Yulia talk about some of the tips that you can do to really enhance your resume and your chance of finding a job, it brings to mind a lot of our classes. So just to give you some background on PACE, our unit here is open enrollment. So it's open to anyone. It's not just OSU students, staff, faculty. It's open to anyone. You don't have to be an OSU student to enroll in our programs. We have a variety of certificate programs that could be really great for enhancing a resume. If there's a field that you're interested in getting into that maybe isn't your education or work background, or you're fresh out of school and looking to expand your opportunities for jobs that are out there, we have a lot of programs that could be a good fit for that. We have leadership certificates. So if you're looking to get maybe more of a management position but don't necessarily have that experience, that's something you could feature on your resume. We also have programs all across the board, from project management to human resources to digital marketing. If you're interested in brushing up on social media skills and wanted to put that on your resume, or just even tips for being able to better communicate with people, as Yulia said, being able to reach out and connect, whether it's in writing or in person. We have courses that can help you with your communication skills or writing styles. So just knowing that that professional development opportunity is out there, and again, it's available to anyone. And something else that's kind of unique, we certainly rely on OSU faculty to teach courses here, but we also have a lot of experts from the industry that are coming in to teach these classes and from these professional associations that Yulia mentioned. So I think it gives you a little different perspective than a traditional college course. We do have some on-site courses, but for the large part, our courses are online, so that also makes it flexible for people that are working or maybe still in school to get these skills built up as well. So again, our website is pace.oregonstate.edu if you're interested in checking out more of our programs.
Awesome, and we also are pretty proud to offer a 15% discount for any OSU alumni as well. So I know that there's a few other questions as well, so thank you, Emily, very much. We're pretty excited. If you want to reach out to PACE at all, feel free. We'll send out that contact information as well. And one of the last questions we've got here is, what's a good length for a cover letter, Yulia? It's a little off topic, but
I would say if you can try to keep it to one page, that's ideal. If it has to go to 2 pages, that's okay. But if you can make it 1 page, that's the best.
Awesome. Well, I know that there's quite a few other questions we'll try and go through and answer after the webinar. But again, feel free to reach out to Yulia if you have specific questions, or if you're looking to apply for a job coming up or something like that. I know you're available and happy to help.
Absolutely.
And Emily and I are both here to answer questions about professional and continuing education. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Please feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect with you guys and hear a little bit more about what you're doing or what you're interested in as well. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.